So we've all heard it 1,000 times before. Communication is key. But what is the key to communication? So I'm mostly going to be focusing on conversation, which in this case is verbal, face-to-face communication. But this applies to all forms of communication, really. So what do most people think conversation is, and how does that usually play out? Most people think conversation is two people talking, two or more people talking, and it shows. What do you see with most conversations? One person's talking, and the other person is thinking about what they're going to say next. And then once the first person's done talking, the second person takes over, and they say what was on their mind, and they just go back and forth like that. Just focusing on talking and getting their point across, but not really on what the other person's actually saying. The real point of a conversation, of communication, is to bridge the gap of understanding between two people. See, we all live in our own little worlds, our own realities. We see things differently, we think differently, have different experiences of life. Nobody really knows what it's like to be another person. So the point of conversation or communication is to better understand what it is to be like somebody else, what their little world is like, what their reality and universe is like. Knowing that your experience of life in your world isn't the same as theirs. To assume that how they see things and what they're going through is comparable to your own experience of life, that's an unfair assumption. Because most conversations are just two people focusing on talking and not focusing on understanding, or when it comes to like a more argumentative type conversation, it's each person trying to win over the other person, right? That's not productive. That's not fostering connection. That's what this is all about. It's about fostering and building connection. So, how do we do this? So, the first thing is most people go into the conversation wanting to say their point, wanting to get understood first. But really, what you want to focus on first is understanding them. Because if you make them feel understood in the first place, like truly understood, that's gonna clear their mind. It's gonna make them want to reciprocate with you and want to actually understand you. If you don't take the time to make them feel understood, they're just gonna be worrying about themselves, what's on their mind, what they want to say. So making sure they feel understood first gives them the space and the willingness to actually make sure you feel understood. So, how do you do that? How do you make someone feel understood? Well, the first thing is to take your attention off of your thinking mind and coming up with a response and put it all on them, on what they're saying and the meaning that they're trying to convey. Your response will come naturally and it'll be much more impactful if you actually are focused and present on what they're trying to convey to you, on understanding them. So you don't have to think about what you're going to say next as they're talking. That disrupts your ability to understand them. Next is you really want to make sure you're coming off as non-judgmental. If you convey any sense of judgment, they're going to be closed off. They're going to want to hide details. They're going to be more hesitant to actually share what's really going on. So come off as non-judgmental as you can. Act as if you're a neutral third party, as if you don't know this person at all. And whatever they say or whatever they mean has no implication on your life whatsoever. When it comes to people that are close to us or people just have some that actually play some role in our life, we generally are focused on some type of outcome when it comes to communication or conversation. We want things to go a certain way. We want them to do something a certain way. And again, that takes away from being unbiased, from being non-judgmental, and really understanding what's going on. The best outcome you can get out of a conversation or communication is when you really understand each other anyway. So focus on that first. And I just want to make a point that it can be really difficult to not be judgmental when you're judgmental of yourself. If you're someone that feels shame or guilt or insecurity, then that's something you may want to look at first as well. Try practicing with your own mind. Try observing your own mind, talking as if you're some unbiased third party listener and your mind is just chattering away. And try practice listening to it without getting sucked into it, without believing anything it's saying or judging anything it's saying as right or wrong or good or bad. Another thing you can practice is different experiences that you have preferences with. and not labeling them as good or bad. For example, eating something that's not normally your preference. Try tasting it and just seeing what that experience is like, the actual sensations, and just really being there with what does it actually taste like? What am I feeling? Don't worry about whether it's good or bad or if it's gross or whatever. Just what is it? Same with try taking a cold shower. You're going to see your mind react right away. I don't like this. This is bad. This is not good. Try just being there with the sensations. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable and you're going to prefer warm water. Can you just be there with what you're feeling and what you're experiencing without judging it, right? If you can't do it with those, you're going to have difficulty doing it in conversations, especially when they're saying something you may not like, or you're in an argument and you want to be right, you want to prove your point and you don't agree with what they're saying. So get used to not judging your moment by moment experience, whether it be of your own personal experience or, what someone else is saying, the feelings in your body, the thoughts in your mind. Get really used to not judging everything coming at you. Another important point is that understanding is not the same thing as agreeing or condoning. Some people don't want to understand another person because they think it's going to mean that they're agreeing to what they're saying, or that they're condoning to what they're saying, that they're allowing what the other person is saying or doing to happen. No, that's not true. Just because you're making the effort to understand another person doesn't mean you're okay with what they're conveying to you. It just means you're being as effective as possible. You're putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Everybody does what they do because they think it's the best course of action, at least at the time, or with the knowledge they have, with the past experience that they have. If you were in their shoes and had gone through exactly everything that they had been through, you would do the same thing that they would do. So it's not your place to judge. Just try to understand, which means be curious and don't make assumptions. Don't assume you already know what the other person's saying. Don't assume you know exactly what they mean. Let them explain to you. Let them tell you whether you get it or not. So, a really vital technique that I recommend everybody use is to paraphrase what the other person is saying back to them until the point to which they agree that you got it right, that you fully understand what they're trying to convey to you. The last part is really important, that they actually agree with what you're saying. What's even more important than the words that they're saying to you is the actual meaning that they want to convey. Sometimes we don't have the right words, or we're kind of confused on how to actually express what we're feeling or what we've been through. And we stumble, we come up with the wrong words. And then the other person uses that against us and goes, oh, well, you said this or you said that. You know, again, this is supposed to be a cooperative effort that fosters connection, not division. It's not about fighting against each other. It's about fighting for each other. It's about fighting for connection and unity and the betterment of everyone's lives, right? Isn't that the point of all communication and conversation, doing anything in general? So you want to let people be able to reiterate, you want to let people be able to take back what they say. So if they say something to you and you go, is this what you're saying? You're saying blah, blah, blah. And they go, oh no, that's not quite right. Actually, what I mean is, you want to let them do that. And then you again go, oh, so what you mean is this. And then finally they go, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I mean. And then you can continue that conversation. If you do that, they'll really appreciate that you're taking the time to actually show your understanding of them. And they're going to want to do the same for you. And if they don't, by the way, that already says a lot about the relationship. So we're not making assumptions, we're not judging, we're not leveraging the other person's words against them, and we're being really curious. We're asking questions. We're not assuming we know everything already. So ask open-ended questions. If you give them this non-judgmental space and you're showing understanding, people are going to really open up. People are far more interesting than you can ever realize. They're just not sharing it because they feel so judged. They don't feel comfortable. So when you actually make a person feel comfortable to open up, you're going to learn a lot of things about them, a lot of things about human nature that you wouldn't otherwise. And people are going to love you for that. People are going to be attracted to you. They're going to be magnetized to you. They're going to want to share everything about themselves with you. So as important as making sure you understand the other person first, you do want to make sure, equally important, that you are understood. So you're going to ask them to use the same technique back on you. You're going to ask them to paraphrase what you're saying back to you and to the point where you agree that they understand exactly what you're saying. And that might sound a little weird or condescending to ask somebody to do that, but if you do it first for them, they'll get it. They'll understand how useful and beneficial it is for the both of you. So don't be afraid to ask for that. Explain why you're doing it. Explain why it's important. Show them this video. Again, if they actually want to foster connection with you and make things better, they'll take the time to do that. They'll understand. It's going to feel a little forced and weird at first on both sides when you're doing it for that person, when they're doing it for you, but just work through that. It's going to feel like almost like you're mocking them sometimes. But if you watch your tone and you come off as sincere and you just explain, I'm really doing this to try to understand you so that you can tell me if I really get it, there'll be no problems there. Like everybody's going through something. We all have our own insecurities, our own problems. We're all overthinking, right? So when somebody truly listens and is truly understanding, it allows someone to actually process all these things that's on their mind, to use the other person as kind of like a mirror to straighten out what's going on inside of them. Because when you just are by yourself and you're just trying to think things out, it's a mess in there. Putting things into language with someone else who can repeat it back to us clearly, it allows us to hear back what we're actually thinking, what's actually going on inside of us in a way that's way more understandable. So you're doing a person a really big favor by reflecting back to them what's inside of them. So there's actually two really important components to communication or a conversation. It's bridging that gap of understanding for two people to really see what's going on in each other's worlds and to get a better glimpse of what it's like to see another person's reality, to be in another person's shoes. And it's actually to better understand our own world, our own inner world, and what's going on inside of us. It's just like therapy. Even though you're talking to another person and you're conveying ideas to another person, it's actually furthering your understanding of yourself, right? So we can all be that for each other to some degree. We don't have to be professional licensed therapists. We just have to truly want to understand one another. You want to walk away from a conversation having learned something, being better off. I see so often, it's so frustrating that people are talking and sharing stories or whatever, and by the time they're done and they walk away from each other, no one's learned anything. They haven't furthered their understanding of each other whatsoever. All they've done is blabber, 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 and, get the dopamine hit from just talking about themselves. And that's it. Language is perhaps the most powerful technology humans have. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but language is a made up thing. Words are all made up things, just like computer parts, right? And just like a computer, you can use it proficiently or not so proficiently. You can use it to just look at memes and brain rot stuff, or you can use it to create and inspire, right? Language is the same thing. Words are the same thing. Your skill with words and language, which you can call conversation, really dictates how effective and how impactful you are. So don't take that technology of language for granted. Learn to actually use it to its full capability because it can make a real difference in your life and other people's lives. If you think about books, they're using the technology of language to transfer information, right? And the best books do it the best. They convey the most feeling or they convey the most useful information that you can start using in your life. Conversation is the same thing, except it's live and it's dynamic. And most people aren't so great at it. They're not so good at using language. So if you take the time to really understand them, to ask questions, to double check if you get what they're saying, it's going to really help them out. Because the better they can put what they're trying to get across into language and you help them, the better they can understand themselves again. So there's all types of relationships out there. There's friendships, there's family, there's professional, there's romantic. When it comes to all of these, especially romantic relationships, the one thing that is make or break is the ability and willingness to communicate and to understand one another. You can have all sorts of other problems, but if you don't get that one right, you're not going to resolve those problems. That is the underlying problem, the root of them all. Because a lasting working relationship isn't about conflict. Conflict isn't the thing that ruins relationships. It's the inability to resolve conflict. And to be able to resolve conflict, you need to be able to have conversations. You need to be able to communicate in a way where you're actually understanding each other, where you're not fighting against each other, but you're cooperating and you're building connection, you're building understanding. That way, you guys can work on the best outcome possible. If you're not getting your ideas across, if you're not really getting where that person's coming from, why they did what they did, if you're just judging or blaming, that's not going to heal the relationship. So go ahead and give that a try. It might be a little bit awkward at first, but just focus on being present. Don't worry about what's going on in your mind when you're talking with another person. You'll see people start lighting up. You'll see people want to start sharing everything with you. You'll see people start falling in love with you effortlessly. In that, you'll get a real sense of connection with people. We've all had experiences where we go to a social event like a party, and even though we meet and talk to so many people, we feel just as lonely, if not more lonely, by the end of it, right? It's because we don't know how to have these conversations. We don't know how to get deep and really bridge that gap with each other. So give all of what I said a try, and I really hope that it helps you out. This is a really important topic to me. It's made a big difference in my life. And I think we need more of this in this world. And it starts with each one of us choosing to do this, taking the responsibility on ourselves, not making other people change, but being the change that we want to see. There's so many other complicated ways that people come up with to try to make things better in the world, but start simple. So thanks for tuning in. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, of course. I'll be happy to answer any that you got, and I'll see you next time.